Forsyth County Board of Education meeting on June the 26th, 2018. This evening we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by an invocation. If you will all please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Dear Lord, I come before you and ask for your grace and your wisdom as we meet together this evening. Father, prepare our hearts and our minds to hear and receive one another. And Lord, please to continue to wrap your hand of protection around all of our students and our staff over this summer break. Continue, O Lord, to just give us the wisdom and knowledge and understanding in all that we do. Amen. You may be seated. So we have some special recognitions this evening, and this time I would like to recognize Ms. Hill.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, district staff, and community members. I am Lakeisha Hill, the Assistant Principal of Main Street Academy and the President of the Forsyth Assistant Principals Association, also known as FAPA. We have one board member here who is going to be serving as the new FAPA President, and his name is Daniel Bryant. Each year, FAPA hosts a bowling tournament to raise funds for our scholarship. This year, we broke a record by raising almost $6,000 due to sponsorships from our schools and businesses in the community. As a result, we were able to increase the amount of our scholarships to $250. Tonight, I am here to recognize the high school seniors who are the recipients of the 2017-2018 FAPA scholarships. Yoselyn Alcacer Perez from Glenn High School. She will be attending Forsyth Tech. Leela Rice Cuthro from Early Middle College. She will be attending North Carolina A&T State University. Victor Desnoyers, he is not with us tonight. He is from Atkins, and he will be attending A&T. I'm sorry, he'll be attending Howard University. Jayana Gray, she is from Winston-Salem Preparatory Academy, and she will be attending UNC Charlotte. David Sarber Green, he is from R.J. Reynolds High School, and he will be attending UNC Chapel Hill. Kiara Leak, she's from East Forsyth High School, and she will be attending Winston-Salem State University. Sophia Lee from Reagan High School, she will be attending UNC Chapel Hill. Julian Monell, he's not with us today. He is from Parkland IB High School, and he will be attending North Carolina State University. Ashlyn Paige Lawrence, she is from Mount Tabor High School, and she will be attending NC State, and she's not with us today as well. Haley Pavanas from North Forsyth High School, she's not with us today, but Haley will be attending UNCG. And standing in place for Wade Petticord is his mother. He is in Europe right now. Yes, and he attended Walkertown High School, and Wade will be attending UNC Charlotte. In place of Lachey Pettigrew from J.F. Kennedy High School is Miss Ashby, the assistant principal, and Lachey will be attending Winston-Salem State University. Standing in place for Kiana Roseborough, she attended West Forsyth High School, and Kiana will be attending Winston-Salem State University. Thank you all for your accomplishments, and thank you all for applauding them.
Again, congratulations to all of our students, and thanks to our Forsyth Assistant Principal Association for putting those scholarships together. I know that they worked very hard on that. Board, I skipped over our agenda review at the very beginning, so I do not believe we have any changes to the agenda that is before us tonight. Do I have a motion to approve? Thank you, Mr. Barr and Mr. Singletary. All in favor? All right, thank you. That concludes our special recognitions. Next would be public comments on agenda items. I have no one signed up to speak on an agenda item that is on the agenda for this 6:30 meeting. So we will move right into our discussion items. First, I will recognize Paula Wilkins. Oh, there she is. As we talk about our 1819 Cook Literacy Model School Calendar Adjustment.
Good evening, members of the school board and Dr. Emery. I wanted to come before you again this year, as we did at the end of last year, to discuss the extended calendar for Cook. Just as a review, in the 2016-17 school year, we overall had extended learning time of 23.5 days. And for us, that was a 5-day early start before the school district, a 5-day extended calendar at the end of the school year, and then 30 additional minutes per day for the school. So last year, in order to support ongoing learning needs for our staff and to think about how do we continue to gain and push forward the momentum we had in year one, we asked to do our days a little differently. So we wanted to continue our extended learning time, but that was reduced a little bit in order to support ongoing learning and professional learning for our staff. So at the beginning of the year, when we had the district-wide staff kickoff, because we were already in school, we wanted to make sure that our staff could participate in that, as well as additional early release days to support our ongoing efforts with Orton Gillingham, as well as with other curriculum efforts that we were supporting as well. So we asked to continue our 5 additional extended early start, the extended school year at the end of the year, the 30 additional minutes, and then we asked for 2 whole protected staff days, and then 2 additional early release days for Cook, which you all approved. So we reviewed our attendance and thinking about where we are as a staff and our student attendance at the end of the year. So we looked at 16-17 data. So the week of EOGs in 2017, what we looked at our attendance. So on average, for most of our EOG days, we had max 10% of our students to over 15% of our students out. When we look at the very next week, when we are in extended school year and the school district is out, our attendance markedly increases. So if you look at overall, we have about a 28 to 30% of our students out of school, and that was in 2017. So we looked again at 2017, 2018, our EOG days. Less than 10% of our students were out during our EOG days. And that actually increased to over 30 with the last day of school, over 70% of our students out. Not what we want in thinking about use of extended learning time and resources. So then we went and asked our staff. So we think about how we're using extended learning time, what is giving us the best bang for our buck, so give us some feedback. So we said, staff, is the additional 30 minutes effective? Is the early start effective? Is the end of the year effective? Give us your vote. Either way, what would you support? So 100% of them voted yes, keep the additional 30 minutes, start for every day, the additional 30 minutes of learning time. Keep the early start and keep ongoing professional development support for Cook. Everyone, 100% voted no to the extended school year. Of course, for a variety of reasons. Some might have been exhaustion as we got towards the end of the year. But the other piece that many of the faculty members noted was that students are not here. And in order to extend learning time and it be meaningful, students have to be present. So here's our request for the board for the next year. We'd like to continue our early start with our staff. 1 week earlier than the school district, continue the 30 minutes additional learning time. We'd like to also continue and ask to keep the 2 early release protected days for Cook, and then end on the regular school district date for the end of the year, so no extended year. So what that would mean for us in extended learning time is going from 20 additional days to 15 additional days. So that is the trade-off we would make in reducing the additional days. What questions do you have for me?
Questions, board members of Paula? No questions.
I just want to say thank you to our staff. I know we just really ended the school year and some are still working and they are here present. So thank you, Team Cook. Just want to give a shout out. And thank you all for your support.
Okay, thank you. This time I'll recognize Heather Horton, principal at Petrie Elementary.
Good evening, Madam Chair Jones, board members, Dr. Emery. Thank you for the opportunity to give you an update. We're really excited to share some data from our first year of implementation around NNN and to ask for your support and some next steps. As you remember, we had a strong focus on increasing classroom behavior management so that students are able to engage students in the classroom. And the first step of that was to implement a new model and a new approach that's called No Nonsense Nurture. That started with a full day of PD on August the 18th. And I'd like to share a little bit of data from that one-day PD. We asked teachers to complete a survey at the end. 41 responded. And one of the questions was, how valuable did you find the NNN training? Of the 41 that responded, no one said that it was not valuable. And we had 14 teachers, 34% said valuable, but 65% found it extremely valuable. Took that a step further and asked them to compare it to other professional development experiences they have had in the past and to rate whether it was less impactful, equally impactful, or more impactful. Only one found it less. 41% said it was equally impactful, but over half found that professional development more impactful than other PD experiences they've had in the past. We also gave teachers an opportunity to provide some open-ended feedback, so this is one of the comments we received. I love this training. I've been teaching for more than 30 years, and this has helped me to reflect on changes for the future. So the second step after that full one-day PD was to train 3 coaches who could then support teachers in the classroom as they implement this model through real-time coaching with walkie-talkie earpieces in the ear with teachers. So the 3 coaches were trained starting at the end of November and then completed that training on February the 2nd. Here are a couple of pictures from that training. And actually, this coach and this classroom teacher are here with us tonight, Chris Anderson and Miss Kara Cahill. That is her kindergarten class. So the first picture on the left is the real-time session, and you can see Chris has the walkie-talkie in her hand, communicating to the teacher, giving her some cues in the moment. And then the second picture is a debrief of how that session went and some planning for next steps after that coaching session. So what does a coaching session look like? Every coaching session starts with a baseline observation that takes 10 minutes. This does not interrupt the teacher's instruction, but the coach sets a timer, and every minute for 10 minutes, the coach will take notes on the use of the model, and they will count how many kids are not engaged or are not following the direction. Then they use that data to plan for a pre-conference with the teacher that takes about 20 minutes, and they set targets for the real-time coaching. Then they come in the classroom, coach for 15 minutes on those targets, and then meet with the teacher later to debrief that session and plan some deliverables and next steps for continued learning for that teacher. So this year, we're pretty excited to say we've been able to coach 20 individual teachers through 135 of those cycles. That's an average of 6.75 cycles per teacher, and that's usually 1 to 2 cycles a week, so you keep the teacher from 3 to 4 weeks, and then they become very confident in the use of this model in the classroom. This gives you a little more information about what that baseline looks like, because that's where our data comes from. This is one of the coach's raw notes, and you're just seeing the top half. Imagine that sheet actually has 10 counts on it instead of 5, but it's a little harder to see if they're all there. But on the left, she is counting how many scholars are not engaged or not following the direction. So on the first line, there were 3 scholars who were not engaged. In the second minute, when the timer went off, no one was not engaged or following the direction. And so then she's also looking at the 4 parts, so the precise directions from the teacher. She's jotting down exactly what the teacher's saying in the directions. Did they narrate the children who were following the direction, consequences or incentives and opportunities to build relationships. At the top, you see the calculation. There were 18 students in the class, 10 counts, and then when you add those 10 together in this classroom, it was 13 that were off task. Do a little bit of math, and you come up with just 7% that were not engaged. So in the upper right-hand corner, 92% of scholars were on task during that observation, and 8% were off. And so then we can use that data when we meet with the teacher to say, great job, you had 90% on, still had 8 that were off. Here's what that looked like, and here's what we're going to do to help you try to get that last 8% in the next coaching session. We also compare that to a rubric, a 5-part rubric on the raw data to see where teachers are from a disengaged classroom to a ritual compliant classroom, on task, active engagement, and transformative engagement. And you can see that it has descriptions of teacher behaviors and student behaviors for each part of the model. The directions, the narration, the consequences, incentives, and relationships, and also an overall description. The coach uses that to kind of assess where the teacher is in the moment, but also to push the teacher to the next level. So when we think about deliverables for the next coaching session, we use some of this language to say, next time, we're going to focus on your incentive system and providing points for class incentives. So here's the data from those 20 teachers. You're looking at the first baseline before they ever had a coaching session, and then the last baseline or the most recent baseline after the coaching. So of the 20 teachers, we started with only 7 out of 20 that were at ritual compliance, and 1 of those was on task when you compare it to that rubric. But after the coaching sessions, we had more than double the number that were on task or higher. So that was, I believe that is 10 teachers there that were in that category. And 1 disengaged. So you see the red drastically decreasing, and there was only 1 that was left at disengaged. When you look at time on task, you don't have any in the red from pre to post, but this is looking at just the percentage and how many were at 90% or higher. So before coaching, we only had 1 classroom that was 90% or higher. After coaching, there were 10 classrooms that were 90% or higher on that baseline. So some student outcomes, one of the ways we measure that is with out-of-school suspensions. So we compared the 16-17 data to the 17-18 data by month. And if you look at the first 6 months of school, we were certainly seeing higher numbers than the year before. But keep in mind that our coaches did not complete their training and really work with a significant number of teachers until February the 2nd when that coaching was completed. But you start to see a huge difference in March after the training is completed. And traditionally, the last 4 months of school, that increases. And if you look at 16-17, you see that trend increasing in the last 4 months, but we were able to drastically reduce the number of out-of-school suspensions for the last 4 months of the year. The other piece of data that was very beneficial by using this model was to be able to pinpoint and identify scholars who needed intensive support. So in the past, when you have a large number of office referrals and a large number of challenging behaviors, it can be hard to identify who really needs intensive support and who just needs some additional structure. So this year, using the model and collecting the data, we were able to identify 8 of our scholars who really needed intensive support, and they were able to be accepted to Elementary School Academy where they received that support that they needed. We also had a SIP goal last year to decrease referrals that resulted from physical aggression from 56% the year before to 40%. And when we ran the numbers for our MTSS review in April, we were at 31%, so coming in with that goal also. I want to show you a quick clip. This is less than 2 minutes of a teacher's classroom. This is the teacher that I told you about in October who was ready to quit on day 2. And she tells that story to lots of people and is okay with me continuing to tell that story for her. But she blossomed under this real-time feedback to be able to implement the NNN. But we're also here tonight to ask you for support in real-time coaching around instruction. But we wanted to try it out just a little bit with members of our culture team to get their feedback. So Jessica's also on the culture team, and Kara is also, so she's been through a little bit of instructional coaching. And that way they could give us some feedback. So what you're going to see in the video are some of the management cues that we've been talking to you about, but one of the strategies is called a do now. And the advantage of the real-time coaching around these strategies is that we help teachers collect data in the moment that they can turn right around and use in the classroom, and we help them with a language for how they get kids excited and engaged about their data on a daily basis. So I hope that you'll pick up on that in this video as well.
Mohammed is sitting scholar stance. Jeffrey put his book down for me. Yurette is a voice level 0. Alexis, first warning, the expectation is putting your book down when I say thank you. I have our percentage of our do now for that first question. That question is our review question. Drum roll. We have 64% of us. But it's okay, because we're about to review and go over it, okay? For that new question, that diagnostic question, that's something we're going to be going over today. Drum roll. 43% of us. Whoa! But I know you all are happy because our goal is what? 100. But look how much room we have to grow. So I'm about to teach an awesome lesson. Y'all are about to pay attention amazingly, like scholars, and we're going to get that up to 100. You ready? Yeah. Okay. When I say go, at a voice level 0, I need your books put away. I need your do now flipped over on your desk.
So she had a review and a diagnostic question, and that diagnostic question, the scholars had not even seen the content yet, but it's getting them excited about what do I know before, and they see the same question in the exit ticket, and they have a chance to change their answer based on what they learned during the lesson. And she goes back and posts that percentage so kids can see, oh, we were at 40% when the lesson started, but by the end of the lesson, we were at 85%. The third step was to establish a school culture team and establish school-wide expectations for all classrooms and the building. That was established in December. And this is some of the work. It's ongoing, but we've accomplished this year. Common expectations, a common consequence ladder that's used in all classrooms, expectations for hallways, dismissal, arrival, common language. Teachers carry a clipboard and they narrate in the cafeteria, in the hallways. It's a part of what we do. And we've worked with a reflective classroom and a reflective team around how do we support scholars who are moving up that consequence ladder? How do we help them reflect on the decisions that they made and help them practice replacement behaviors and hopefully be able to make a different decision the next time? This is an example of some of the common expectations for the hallways, and notice they are in that MVP format, so it's a very common language throughout the building. This is a consequence ladder that is posted. There are posters in every classroom. Scholars know when they go to art or PE, it's always going to be a warning first. It's always going to be a bounce at the third step. The fourth step's the call home. We've had scholars the teacher has not followed the ladder, and they've gotten pretty upset and said, I did it, but she called home and it was supposed to be my cool down. And so the children have really helped teachers stay consistent with the model as well. And we're so excited to think about next year that they're going to return knowing those expectations. And the bottom of that was the tracker the teacher uses. So they're able to put all their class, they carry a clipboard, and when they give a consequence, they can keep up with it. So we're here today to ask you for some support around instructional coaching. It's the same model of coaching, but it shifts from management to instruction. Teachers have to have gone through management first because that's still a big piece of what goes on before you shift to the instruction. Our teachers are ready for that now because they know how to handle challenging behaviors in a high-needs school. We've built the capacity in 3 coaches that from now on will be able to help them with the NNN model. We've adapted our systems to prioritize learning in the classroom, and we're ready to focus on instruction. This year we had a priority school quality review from some district office leaders. One of the pieces of feedback they left for us is that as a school we're doing an outstanding job of improving classroom culture using CT3 No Nonsense Nurture, but they had some recommendations that were to support teachers heavily, not only in management, but in content and pedagogy. So that's certainly what we are ready to do. And their budget comment was to consider using priority funds, which are the funds we're asking you tonight, to use to support teachers' instruction along the same method that we use for management. So what does instructional coaching look like and how is it different? It's 5 strategies. Teachers will have access to online modules that are about an hour each for each of those 5 strategies. They can access those at any time, so at the beginning of the year, if they want to access all of them, they can. But before we coach them on a certain strategy, they need to have watched that video. There are very specific rubrics for how to implement each of those strategies, and the coach is there to help walk them through how to get really good at using that strategy in the classroom. All 5 of those strategies focus on responding to data in the moment, like the one you saw. And they are all, can cross grade levels, can cross content areas. It is not specific to any grade or content level. It's all built around Fisher and Frey's framework for instructional delivery that starts with I do it as a teacher, we do it together, teacher and the class, children do it together, and then you as a scholar do it alone and prove that you're able to do it. So I'll leave you with one final quote from that initial PD. Another teacher who said, I think this was the most applicable PD I have ever attended. Everything presented today will be useful in my classroom for years to come. I want to thank my team. Got several, all the coaches are here. There are teachers here in the audience on their summer break. They are ready for this work. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have, but if you would like to speak to a coach or a teacher, they would be glad to answer any questions for you also.
Thank you, Heather. Board members, do you have questions? Mr. Singletary? No? Mr. Johnson?
Yes, I want to commend her. I got 2 of her boys in my junior golf program, and I noticed this year, there's a big difference in the way those kids act.
Good deal.
You know, I've asked Christian to come by because I'm gonna get the names of those kids Thursday and give them to you. I don't know what took place, but I know there's a big difference there.
Thank you for that feedback.
Good
And we
job.
feel it in the building, so thank you.
Wonderful. Other comments or questions?
Thank you for coming in on your break. It's wonderful to see you here.
Yes. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, we're going to shift gears a little and talk about some data sharing, a data sharing agreement with Forsyth Futures. I believe Marty Ward will lead us in that discussion.
Good evening, Chairman Jones, Dr. Emery, members of the board. I am here to talk about the data sharing project and the master data sharing agreement that you were provided with. The data sharing project is a partnership, and that partnership is between the Forsyth Promise School District and Forsyth Futures. The funding is shared also. It is shared between the Forsyth Promise and the school district. The majority of the funding is provided by the Forsyth Promise with a defined contribution each year from the school system. And it is important to note that the Forsyth Promise has secured a 3-year commitment of grant funds for the project from KBR. The vision for the project is that we will provide agencies and schools in the county with access to a secured integrated data system. And the idea is that that will lead to improved community outcomes. That's for schools and agencies through a continuous improvement process. So the purpose is to provide a process for schools and community agencies to access student data, to just have a way to literally get a hold of that data for case management and for program evaluation. When I say case management, we mean, look up a student profile really quickly or gather data to do evaluations on programs. The other part of this project that's really important is that schools and agencies, community agencies, will be provided with technical support around program evaluation and continuous improvement, how to carry out that process. So this project is 4 different sort of categories of partners, and those are school-based, and that's when we have programs like tutoring programs, mentoring programs. We also have evaluation efforts led by the school district with my team in research and evaluation. For example, we have state and federal grants that we evaluate, and we also evaluate locally funded projects. And then, of course, we have many community partners who support our students, and they also need to evaluate how their programs are working. So 2017-18 was a pilot year for this project, and you see the 3 schools, 1 at each level, who participated: Hall Woodward, Philo Hill, and North Forsyth, and then you see the 3 community partners. Just a sample of what took place over the course of the year. The first bullet has to do with establishing relationships between the data sharing project team and the pilot site staff. We established a parent permission process. It's extremely important that we have parent permission before any data are released. That's a very careful process that's been established. And we can thank our technology department for establishing a daily data feed. So every day the data to the system is refreshed so that the partners can see data, up-to-date data. And we have a process where, say we have an after-school tutoring program. This project allows for the students to be identified as participants, and then we can track whether they're there or not every day. Because when you look at program evaluation, you need to know how often someone's there. And that sounds simple, but that's actually not that easy to do, so this is really helpful. All right, so this slide shows some sample programs. For example, at Philo Hill, programs they were tracking were their after-school tutoring program and a mentoring program they called LEAD. That's just an example. And then YWCA Best Choice Center has been a very active partner. They had an after-school tutoring programs in grades K through 8, and they are starting up some age-based summer programs. And then just sort of to walk you through how this has worked, we're using the Best Choice Center after-school tutoring project as an example. So the data sharing team, which is those partners that were mentioned to start with, worked with the to that establishing relationships part. They went to the site, clarified what the project was all about, and then talked to the program about what their goals were. So when you want to evaluate something, obviously you need to know what it is you're evaluating, what's taking place. And then we started with the development of an initial evaluation plan for that project. And then we provided some training. The data sharing team provided training on what does it mean to continuously improve. And that's the process of getting data, using it to see how we're doing, go back, make some changes, collect more data. So it's a process. We worked with Best Choice Center on developing an evaluation design. And of course they needed to learn how to use the software that's getting that daily data feed. They needed to learn how to handle that program, to identify the students that are attending these programs and tracking program attendance. So that took place. The goal that this particular after-school tutoring program had was to support student academics throughout the school year. Pretty clear. And the outcomes that they want to achieve are improved student grades, decreased disciplinary events, that's in and out of school suspension, and to increase school attendance. So what we're looking to do in the next school year, 2018-19, is to continue doing what we've been doing. It's been a lot of learning, so we'll use that learning, the team learning, many of whom are here, to use what we've learned, and also the sites have learned a lot. Expansion of technical support, what that means is that we've started a process with these sites of a journey together to talk about evaluation and how you go through that process. That will develop as time goes by. And we'd also like to expand the number of sites that are involved with the project. So I'm happy to entertain any questions that you have.
I don't have any questions, just a comment. My comment is I'm so glad to see this partnership between our district and the Forsyth Promise growing. It's so obvious that good outcomes for our children require the whole community to be involved, and I am really happy that this partnership is expanding.
Ms. Clark, do you have
Yeah, you said you've learned a lot in this first pilot year. Can you give just one specific thing that you learned?
Wow, we learned so much. There's so much. Just one. We learned that we need to really understand the data the way we send it so that we can get back the kind of information that we need. We've had to make some adjustments to the data feed. That's one.
And Madam Chairman, speaking to Ms. Clark and Ms. Motzinger, I have to commend the Forsyth Promise team for looking at this data and working to not only make the data collection meaningful, but also to make sure that they are able to show us results, show community organization results, and that's one of the keys right here. There have been plenty of conversations around how they do that, because they have some of the same concerns that we have a lot of data. Now what do we do with it? So I must applaud you folks for working to aggregate that data.
Other questions, board members? I think
Thank you.
at some point, I probably need some additional information about the data collection, and then specifically how we're taking that and applying it with a strategy. Or I understand the collection part of it, and I understand that this was the first pilot for trying to do it, but I think as we're talking about those outcomes, specifically how are we using the data to try to reduce suspension, and some of that would be helpful. I mean, I know this was about the collection of the data, and I know that's, but maybe for some of those pilot programs in year one, and then as you continue to work into year two, what does that look like? Because I think it would be good for us to know specifically some of those things. Right. What are we learning, and what are we doing with it? So
Right.
I'm sure that's a whole different, but maybe that's you, and maybe it's our community partners talking to the board and letting and us having some conversation around that.
And our school system team as well, working on that continuous
Yeah.
improvement. It's really been interesting.
That would be great. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much. So at this time, I'll recognize our Chief Legal Counsel, Ms. Jenkins, as we talk about the MOU with Appalachian State University for the Academy at Middle Fork.
Good evening, Chairman Jones, board members, and Dr. Emery. The last time I was here to give you an overview about the MOU and the lease agreement for Appalachian State University, I provided a kind of a highlight of the main points of those agreements. And I explained that the remaining undecided points centered around the amount for rent, as well as the spaces for usage of the building. Well, the documents before you tonight indicate a recommended rental amount that Appalachian State has agreed to pay on an annual basis for the use of the building. And that amount reflects a rate of $7 per square foot during the school year and $5 per square foot during the summer, for an annual rent of $426,840. And that would be inclusive of utilities for that facility, as well as the first $30,000 in maintenance costs. They will be occupying about 83% of the building, and so pursuant to the agreement, for other routine maintenance costs that exceed $30,000 annually, Appalachian State will reimburse the district according to their pro rata share. Aside from that, the rest of the provisions of the MOU and lease are pretty much unchanged. As I mentioned before, those were pretty much the only outstanding concerns here for the lease, so I did want to provide you that update. Are there any, and I do believe this reflects the concerns and the feedback that the board raised the last time we discussed this.
I believe Ms. Motzinger really wants to say something.
I do need to thank you, because obviously the board gave some very different direction, and I thank you for doing such a good job representing our district in those negotiations. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and I appreciate all of your feedback and direction in this matter. Any other questions?
Comments, questions, board members? No? Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Jenkins. Good job. So, shifting gears, we'll talk about budget amendment number 7 and transfer number 7, and I'll recognize Kim Slusher.
Good evening, Chairperson Jones, members of the board, and Dr. Emery. I'm requesting this afternoon approval of budget amendment number 7 and transfer number 7. This is our year-end budget balancing and also to record any new funds that may have been received in the month of June. I believe you all received this earlier in your packet, so is there any questions or comments on it?
Any questions, comments, board members? I know there's a lot of tidying up, you would say.
There is, definitely. I think there's about 19 pages.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
This time we'll move into our committee reports. Mr. Singletary chaired our Building and Grounds Committee report as well as policy, so I'll let him do both of those. But before we do, we talked about some bond projects and things like that, and so I would, and one of those is happening in Walkertown, and so I'd like to recognize Scott Snow. He's the town manager for Walkertown. Thank you for working so well with Darrell Walker and his staff and all the things that are going on there in your community. We appreciate Walkertown always supporting our school district, so thank you. Mr. Singletary.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This afternoon when the Building and Grounds Committee met, we actually had an opportunity to meet two of our employees of the month, Carlos Crawford from our painting section and Nathan Crutchfield from our maintenance section, both individuals that exemplify what we're looking for with our Winston Forsyth County schools and the high quality of people that we have supporting our teachers and students. We also had an opportunity to review a request by Piedmont Natural Gas to provide an easement off of Shore Road, and this easement is related to the new Rural Hall interchange with the highway system. We also had an opportunity to look at plans for our middle school security and access control. Basically, $3.5 million has been allocated to update cameras, provide entry access control for all of our middle schools, and also to provide some additional access control when we're looking at secondary entrances to the school, back doors, exits to pods. So security came up with some interesting options for us. So we're going to continue to work with that so that we can enhance security at all of our middle schools the way we have our elementary schools. And eventually, we will be looking at how we can also impact our high schools. We had two action items. Once again was the Piedmont Natural Gas easement, which we voted on this evening, and of course the authorization to bid for the Glenn High School Stadium. Toward the end of the meeting, the staff took an opportunity to provide us with a PowerPoint of ongoing projects that would be happening in the community during the summertime. Right now, one of those was the Mount Tabor stadium replacement, and there's going to be a ribbon cutting for that October the 31st. Right now they're expecting that stadium to be completed by July the 13th, and we're on track for that as it appears. In addition, we are looking at, before our students return, having the traffic safety pattern at Parkland taken care of, along with Southeastern Middle School. We're also working on the traffic safety there next week. In the next week. As you may know, if you travel the corridor, ribbon cutting August the 31st, I apologize. If you travel the Northwest Corridor, you'll notice that that's been blocked off right now. It's blocked off because we are working on that traffic safety pattern there. Once that reopens, you're going to find out that the design is going to be safer, it's going to provide better parking, but just the very design is going to slow that flow of traffic through there. So we think it's going to be a major safety improvement. In addition to that, the HVAC system is currently in progress. The HVAC replacement is currently in progress at Ashley Middle School, and there is a video on Winston Forsyth County Schools. I said Ashley Middle, didn't I? Ashley Elementary, excuse me. I'm looking right at you. Okay, Ashley Elementary. And on the Winston Forsyth County Schools website, there's actually a small video showing what's going on at Ashley, and throughout the summer there are also going to be videos of other projects that are currently going on. That concluded our business with the Building and Grounds. From there we went into our policy committee, where we had a brief discussion in relations to the wellness policy, policy number 5143. There are still questions that need to be addressed to that, so we will continue to get updates from Dion, our counsel, as we move forward. And we are also aware that over the summer there'll be discussion in relations to our student code of conduct and the use of e-cigarettes and tobacco products with our schools. In addition to that, we're looking forward to seeing a review of 6th grade athletic participation, and we're hoping to get some updates on those when we return in August and September. Madam Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singletary. Ms. Clark, our curriculum committee report.
So last week we met for curriculum committee and we covered 3 topics. The first was we had an overview by Mr. Mark Pilson, our Assistant Program Director of Summer Enrichment, on summer enrichment, a little history, and then what's going on this summer. He talked about some of the themes, such as Around the World in 20 Days is the theme that they're looking at in 1st grade in summer enrichment. It goes on through June the 18th through July the 19th. And some other offerings in grades 2 through 6 include golf, pottery, digital photography, forensic science, Lego robotics, and lots of other marvelous things that kids are engaged in this summer during summer enrichment. Also, let me just put a plug in here for the musical performance of summer enrichment. It's going to be Shrek. Let me just plug that because Miss Dana Caldwell-Jones went last year during the summer to the presentation of Mary Poppins, and she just raved and raved and raved. So I just want to say, come and support our students in Shrek the Musical, July 16th through the 18th in the Reynolds Auditorium. So that was just a little blurb on summer enrichment. And then we heard from Deborah Hartman on PLTs, Professional Learning Teams, and how valuable they are in our district to our teachers and to impacting student outcomes. We talked about how each PLT should start with an essential question and how important it is in those that teachers feel like they have a voice, because they are to be guided and run essentially by teachers. And it's a way that teachers, again, just collaborate and come together to work on student outcomes. Finally, we heard from Dr. Amy Nell about the kindergarten standards-based report card. We talked about that last month or the month before. A new way of looking at student progress in kindergarten. We have piloted it this past year, and eventually it's going to expand into 1st and 2nd grade, but it's going to be a more in-depth coverage for parents and teachers as to where a child is in the learning process throughout the year, based on standards that they should be learning throughout the year in kindergarten and in 1st and 2nd grade. And what we were looking for in this curriculum committee meeting was feedback from parents that we had requested. Parents, along with teachers, feel like these report cards are a marked improvement from what we have had in the past. They are more detailed and more informative, but parents overall felt like they were a great improvement. And so, as I said, these standard-based report cards will move on into 1st and 2nd grade as well in the coming next couple of years. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. That concludes our discussion items this evening. Board members, we have several action items. So we will start with consider approval of the 2018-19 Cook Literacy Model School Calendar Adjustment. Do I have a motion to approve? Mr. Singletary, second. Ms. Parker, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Consider approval of the CT3 contract for Petrie Elementary. Do I have a motion to approve?
Approved.
Ms. Clark, do I have a second? Mr. Barr, any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say I saw that in action, that training. Is Heather still here? Yeah. It was phenomenal, and I think it is something that we should look at. Did I tell you this before? For the stay teachers? for stay, did I mention that to you? Okay, I think I did. But anyway, I think that part of the training is valuable for classroom management, especially for young teachers who don't get a whole lot of that when they go through the School of Education. So kudos. I'm glad to see that it's going well, and it was a marvel to watch.
I believe she's going to vote for it. It's just a good guess. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Consider approval of data sharing agreement with Forsyth Futures. Do I have a motion to approve? Second. Thank you, Mr. Singletary and Ms. Motzinger. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of the MOU with Appalachian State University for Academy at Middle Fork. So moved. Ms. Motzinger, do I have a second? Second. Ms. Parker, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of the budget amendment number 7 and transfer number 7. Do I have a motion to approve? Mr. Barr, do I have a second? Mr. Singletary, any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Thank you. So, do you want to make a comment, Dan?
And again, there's a lot of information in this budget transfer, and as I go through, and as I reiterated, I'll reiterate like I did last week. In our capital outlay fund, number 1 is bond proceeds and the allocation of those, and there's nowhere in there that I see anything about Ashley. So again, I will not be voting for this budget transfer.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. So the transfer was approved, though. Thank you for your clarifying comments. Thank you. Next, consider approval of authorization to bid and drawing approval for Glenn High School Stadium. Do I have a motion to approve? Ms. Parker, do I have a second? Ms. Clark, any discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Consider of approval of the P&G easement on Shore Drive. We discussed this earlier in our Building and Grounds Committee report. Do I have a motion to approve? Okay, so Mr. Singletary, second, Ms. Taylor. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of contract extensions for Centers for Exceptional Children. Do I have a motion to approve? So moved. Ms. Motzinger, do I have a second? Second. Mr. Singletary, any discussion?
Just what an extraordinary thing in our community that this is available for our children. If you have not visited these schools, please do, because it will make you really proud of what's available to children here in our schools.
Absolutely, Ms. Motzinger. Very good point. Okay, so I have a motion and a second. All in favor? And motion carries. Consider approval of school resource officer contract with the Winston-Salem Police Department. Do I have a motion to approve? Did someone say something? Okay. Ms. Parker made the motion, seconded by Mr. Johnson. Do we have any discussion? All right, all in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of school resource officer contract with the Forsyth County Sheriff's Department. Do I have a motion to approve? Mr. Singletary, second. Ms. Taylor, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of school resource officer contract with Kernersville Police Department. Do I have a motion to approve? Ms. Clark, second. Ms. Parker, any discussion? All in favor? Oh.
I do want to say real quick, I wanted to take a moment with the things that we have seen in our schools across the nation. It's wonderful that in the Winston-Forsyth County system that we are able to have such a good relationship with our law enforcement officers, and I just wish we could get a little bit of a break on the cost. But other than that, you know.
Thank you, Mr. Singletary. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of amendment to contract with the YMCA of Northwest North Carolina. Do I have a motion to approve? Mr. Singletary, second. Second, Vice Chairman Barr. We have any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of the lease with City Church lease. Do I have a motion to approve? Mr. Singletary, second. Ms. Taylor, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of the First Christian Church lease. Do I have a motion to approve? Ms. Taylor, second. Mr. Singletary, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of Grace Life Church lease. Do I have a motion to approve? Vice Chairman Barr, second. Mr. Singletary, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of Mount Tabor UMC lease. Do I have a motion to approve? Mr. Singletary, do I have a second? Vice Chairman Barr, all in favor? I didn't think we needed discussion, okay. Consider approval of Tapestry Church lease. Do I have a motion? Vice Chairman Barr, second. Ms. Taylor, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. That concludes our action items for this evening. We have 2 items on our consent agenda: approval of the meeting minutes for June 12th, 2018, and approval of the general personnel report. Do I have a motion to approve? Mr. Singletary, second. Mr. Johnson, all in favor? Wonderful. Consent agenda is approved. That moves us to comments on public comments.
Thank you for joining us on your school channel, Cable 2.